Absolutely. So first of all, let me thank you guys for the invitation to be here. I'm delighted to be in Turkey, a country that I like very much, and the warmness of the Turkish people is really special. So thank you for the great hospitality of the people who have invited me here. I also want to highlight, to your point earlier, one of the greatest assets you guys have in this country from a third-party perspective, and as an American, I can say it's Turkish Airlines. I have flown all over the world and had the honor of flying in first class in many airlines, and I can tell you the service of Turkish Airlines is superb. So I want to commend you guys as a company and as a society for really creating such a wonderful airline. It's amazing. And I'm sure the cargo business is equally great. I haven't had the opportunity to go down in the cargo, but I'm sure it's great. So from my perspective, I make pharmaceuticals and vaccines. I spent my career as a lab researcher. I'm a molecular biologist by training, a scientist creating medicines and vaccines, and that's really where I spent most of my career. And then moved on to manufacturing these products and really running companies to manufacture the product. And when I started my career 25 years ago or so, the pharmaceutical giant Merck, which produces a lot of pharmaceuticals and has been a pioneer in a number of different areas, including some of the recent COVID therapies that came out of the pandemic. And back 25 years ago, our supply chain was all local. So we would get the vials from the company down the road, and we would get the stoppers, the lids from the other company down the road or the other state. So the logistics was not really an issue. What started transforming, again, about 20 years ago or so, was that we wanted to reduce cost across the board, and that required that we source product all over the world. And there was a clear initiative in our industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, to source product from all over the world, looking for the best pricing and the best quality. Now, that's okay if you make a gadget, but we make regulated, controlled products. We're a very stringent manufacturing environment. So we require high-quality products, and once you source it, it's really difficult to alter your source, right? Because you qualified it, takes you years to qualify it, and it's not like you can call another company and source vials the next week. It doesn't happen like that. So for the last 20 years or so, we've been rolling out that model where we source components, and a pharmaceutical drug, just to put it into perspective, has a lot of critical components. Most of the traditional drugs have what are called APIs. Those are predominantly manufactured in Asia today, in India. So if you take an antibiotic even here today, chances are the raw components of that antibiotic were made in Asia somewhere. So the sourcing has really evolved to the point where the last time we analyzed one of our vaccines, the components of that product came from 27 different countries. So if you could imagine, we source it all around the world. And that's okay in a normal environment, but obviously in the pandemic environment, where logistics and sourcing become limited because of supply, personnel, and transport, that becomes a real challenge. So I think what we're seeing now is an evolution to go back to the original model where sourcing was more concentrated and so forth. Now the byproduct, the positive byproduct of COVID has been that we've developed probably the most sophisticated cold chain that the world has ever seen. Our vaccines, the current vaccines we have on the market that are mRNA in nature, we can't store them at room temperature. So we have to freeze them and transport them in the cold environment. And because of the desire and the need to move those pharmaceuticals quickly and those vaccines quickly around the world, we really have developed an immense sophisticated cold chain. And so I think that's a positive byproduct of it. And I know you guys play a big role in that, so kudos to you guys for playing that role. So anyway, I think we're going to see some dynamics of the marketplace as it relates to how we manufacture and how we move products around. And I think it presents opportunities to countries like Turkey to be players in a supply chain that previously they may not have, because the Asian supply chain is becoming really limited. Anyway,
thank you, Joe. Thank you. Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, talent is I think is a challenge for any organization, irrespective of what industry you're in. And in the U.S., we actually have an immense problem right now for talent. In our businesses, it's even hard to get the most simple of laborers. Even administrative assistants are difficult to get, and you have to pay premiums. And I think one of the issues was really the initiative the U.S. government rolled out early on during the pandemic to provide income to employees in general. And I think that had a negative impact in that a lot of those residual employees that are out in the pool don't really have a need to go back to work because they're incentivized by the government to stay home. So that becomes one of our challenges, which is difficult to circumvent until, you know, the government stops doing that, right, and have those employees come back to work. I think the other dynamic is really, you know, training. I think in general, when you invest early on in people's careers, that happened to me at Merck. You know, when you have somebody coming out of university or out of technical training programs, and you really invest in them as a human being, there's a loyalty that gets created. And so we're trying to implement programs like that bring in people right out of the university, and we invest in them on their education. We oftentimes pay for their advanced education and get them to commit to stay with the organization. I think those models are rolling out, and I think, look, talent will continue to be a challenge. I think, again, training is probably one of the best investments one can make in an
Thank you, Joe.
employee.
So, well, last but not least,
I mean, I ran out of things to say, thanks to my colleagues here. But let me reiterate two of the things that I think are really important, and I would add a third point to that: geography. I mean, obviously, your geographic location is incredibly vital for sourcing from Asia into, you know, the States and beyond. I think that's really important, and you shouldn't dismiss that, or at least, you know, pay attention to that. The other thing is you have a very young labor force. I mean, if you were Japan, I'd say it's a different story, but, you know, you have an educated young labor force, which I think will allow you to grow and expand as the markets evolve. The third point, which I think it's an important piece for all of us in this room to keep in mind, is COVID-19, if it's done anything, it's caused chaos around the world. Yeah. And there's always opportunity in chaos, right? The logistics supply chains have changed, manufacturers have changed, and there was a recent survey where they surveyed the top 50 countries in the US, and their number one tasks that they're focusing and facing is really reshaping their supply chain, finding new vendors because the current vendor chain is completely disrupted. So I think that's an opportunity for anybody who's entrepreneurial and is looking for new avenues to create new opportunities and new businesses. The cautionary tale, and I hate to end with negative news, but why not? It's all been positive, so I might as well throw something here that's worth considering and keeping in mind. And that is that inflation across the world is really having a significant impact. As a matter of fact, this morning, the U.S. will release its inflation numbers, and it's the highest it's been in 40 years. So it's astonishing what is happening to the buying power of countries and individuals. It's going down. I would argue that creates an opportunity for low-cost manufacturers and logistics. I'm happy to say that when I compared pricing for my ticket here, Turkish Airlines was the cheapest. So you guys have an advantage of some sort, and I think it's worth leveraging that in an environment that's potentially negative.